Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back down the rabbit hole. I'm your host, Monty Hook, and I'm in the studio in Bali with my buddy, Rory Callaghan. How are you, man?
Going good.
Thanks for coming into the studio. It's a real pleasure. I know you fairly well. We've known each other probably, 4 or 5 years or maybe even more through similar business circles, and you've been a speaker at similar events that I've spoken at. And, your world is health, wellness,
happiness, connection,
self-care, all of it, and we'll talk about all of it. But you live here in Bali and live the good life, and I think we're pretty aligned in values of freedom and lifestyle and health. And you're also a surfer, and so
do my best.
much to talk about. But for the audience, what are you known for? So your website is selfcare.global, and we'll go into some of the elements of all of that. But what is it that gets you fired up? What is it that gets you out of bed in the morning?
I was just saying to Monty before I jumped on that it's a really good time to have this conversation because we're in the start of 2021. It's been the end of 2020. There's been this whatever you want to call it and label it, but it's been this pandemic year. It's been this year where people have been isolated and disconnected at home, and like a lot of people in the local community haven't had work since March last year, so there's an economic factor associated with that. So, I guess I got to this point today, and when you asked me to jump on this podcast, I was like, this is a beautiful time because I'm pretty fired up, fed up, and but empathetic and compassionate. And I think my big vision is just to, if I get to a point where I've got more than I need, then it's my duty to build a longer table rather than higher fences. Yeah. So that's kind of what it's about. And self-care is my passion. It's the thing that gets me out of bed, but it's just reminding people that they don't need to be fixed. You don't need these passive interventions as a primary source of health and well-being. This connection, this community, this beautiful natural life support system like surfing, movement, mind, positive mental attitudes. Helping each other, shared and circular economies. I think that's what health and well-being is.
Yeah. Cool, man. So you've helped me along the way with some physiotherapy. So your background is actually in formally trained medical profession. Give us a little bit of a background to that and how it is that you got to, because you're not practicing anymore, right? You've now kind of latched onto this bigger picture of what you want to create in the world, and that's now your focus. Yep. So how did you get to that? How did you get to that point?
I had a passion to play Australian football when I was younger, so I played for East Fremantle Football Club in West Australia, and that's a beautiful community. And I guess the first thing was I became curious about how to be a better athlete. So I went to UWA and studied sports science and exercise physiology and neuromuscular biomechanics, and that was really fun. So I learned how the body kind of functioned. I got to dissect human bodies. I remember we had a microbiology lab, and I got to extract DNA onto a stick, and see the evolutionary blueprint on a stick in front of me. And there was some really profound moments, and I guess that kind of sparked my curiosity to then just be more curious about the human body and the human experience and how to really ignite our human potential. And at about 20, I think, I got stress fractures in my back whilst playing football and studying. So then I became curious about, how do bones heal themselves? I saw chiropractors and physios and osteos, and I spent 12 months going around in circles, and I didn't find a solution to my problem. And then I met this really amazing sports physio, Ben Raysmith, and he said, man, you got a stress fracture. It's here's natural healing time frames. He's just go be a kid for the next 6 months. Swim, don't load it up, have fun, and then come back in 6 months' time, and that area is going to heal. And sure enough, it did. And then I had the best footy season I had, after that. And I guess that's where I then became curious to be a physio. And I went on and did a master's degree at Curtin and studied that. And then I actually finished that degree, came back to the East Freo Footy Club. And I was really passionate about the young athletes, and not just helping them be better athletes, but preventing them from getting these hip and groin issues and stress fractures. So I built this program out of university just to screen all the kids, and we screened probably about 5,000 kids in WA, and I think that program's still running now. And then that was kind of my life up until that 25, 26, and I loved it. I worked 100 hours a week, and that's probably where the self-care thing came in, because I became a health professional that lost my health, and I knew all the things, but stress kind of adds up, and I $1,000 hex debt and, you know, trying to buy a house and have a relationship and make time to eat and exercise and play footy and do all the stuff I used to do. It was just, I was just completely out of balance. So.
Yeah. Yeah, so one of the things I love about you and your conversation, and we'll go into the details of what's on your website and everything, but you're very well-rounded in your understanding of, you know, it's not just the physical body. We live inside an ecosystem.
Yep.
There's an environment, there's connection with people, there's so many different factors and elements which actually affect our health and our experience of life. Because at the end of the day, the overarching thing that drives all of us is having a good experience of life. Right? And example, you've been working with me on my ribs because I had 3 fractures. Now, when I, you know, it's, you know, pretty standard when you get a fracture or some kind of injury in one specific location. It's like that's the spot. That's the spot, and that's what you treat, right? But working with you, what you've been able to show me, and me digging in more and doing my own research, you know, I've found that it's not the ribs. No. That was a symptom.
That's a signal from your body, right?
So my fractures was a symptom of something else going wrong with my body. One of my weaknesses is my back, but the back is probably because of the pelvis and the hips and the knees and the legs. And
the knee bone's connected to the shoulder bone,
The whole thing is connected. And then beyond that, there's also the food that I eat. There's the environment. There's the relationships that I have with other people. There's a relationship with myself.
The behaviour.
There's, you know, the behaviours. There's everything. So that's what I love about you, and you seem to have a really good grasp on weaving these things together. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, and also, again, like the concept that I was sharing before was this concept that like you don't need to be fixed. Like your body knows how to heal that space. You know, it's like every single second, like 50 million cells just regenerate without conscious attention. And it's like the choices we make each day, our beliefs, you know, our beliefs change biology, you know what I mean? Like our thoughts can like literally change our epigenetic pathways, and there's like a million exponential pathways that those genes could express themselves, right? So it's like my job is just to, 1, remind you that you don't need to be fixed, and then 2, just to support the body's natural processes, and then 3, help you come to your own self-realization so that eventually you become self-redundant. You know, I'm not a guru, you know, like that's the thing. I'm a 33-year-old Aussie surfer who's, you know, like living a life that makes me happy, and doing my best to build longer tables rather than higher fences, and along the way just kind of teaching people and empowering them to do it in the context of their own life. So
I was listening to a really interesting podcast this morning, Aubrey Marcus and Zach Bush.
Zach 2 Bush. Good guys.
So I'm really fascinated by Zach Bush, his stuff at the moment. Like he seems to be the one that resonates with me in terms of how he explains how the body works, how viruses work, you know, everything to do with, and he weaves in the current situation in terms of politics and all this kind of stuff. Like what is actually happening with the big picture. And one of the things that he's spoke about was mitochondria and how the electrical signals can be measured, right? And what he was saying was, and I'm probably, you know, screwing it up, but at whatever, you know, level 13, in whatever, you know, in whatever form that is, that's when the body is healthy and it doesn't need fixing, right? And then cancer comes in at about 4.5 and death happens at 3.5. So our objective is not to try to fix those things, it's to cultivate us staying at that 13, right? So talk us through your relationship with that and how that kind of weaves in with self-care.
I think the world is captivated with numbers right now and linear kind of algorithms for how the body works. And my gut feeling is we're so far off the mark, it's ridiculous. You know, like the amount of conversations I've been having with friends and families and just my community around the belief systems, you know, from 2020 about, you know, people are fearful of one virus, and it's like one of 380 trillion that have been here long before humans even walked the planet, right? We knew about it in 1920, 1916, it's just been given a different label and different magnification, and you know, we've become fearful of this thing, you know what I mean? And like we've got this beautiful negative bias in our mind. I'm sure everyone's got, you know, that imposter or that lizard brain or whatever it is, and the media kind of plays on that because we know that if you see as an example, there was a beautiful thing on Tank's Good News, and there was this lady from Auschwitz. She was 97. She was, she beat COVID. And she walked out, and the whole story was about her just going for her first walk. So I posted that. And then I got a lot of negativity about this really, really positively biased post. And I became curious about what was up with that. And it was because what we've seen in the media the last, 12 months and beyond is like this place in the world right now where this is illegal. You know what I mean? Like there's government kind of legislation.
Well, we should be wearing a mask at least.
Yeah, there's government legislation saying that you shouldn't have sex with your partner, and you should, lay in bed and masturbate separately. And
well, there's even news reports about you shouldn't sing birthday songs and hug.
You shouldn't kiss your partner. And I'm like, if we believe this to be true, like belief changes biology. You talk about Aubrey Marcus. I want people to tune into Dr. Bruce Lipton. He is a guy that everyone should be listening to right now. He talks about how stress is the foundation for disease. You know what I mean? If you're taught to fear connection, if you're taught to fear your natural environment, if you're taught to fear the unknown, we know 1% of potential viral diversity. But we're sitting here speaking with so much confidence about what we unconsciously are incompetent about, and then creating rules and regulations for people to live by.
And we think that stress is just that big kind of thing of what's going on in my life. Like my boss is giving me shit and I'm stressed about that one thing.
Yeah.
But stress is, it's living in this environment, this constant state of fear and, this narrative of everything's fucked up and...
Yeah, and I guess that's what you're doing here. This is a lighthouse, right? Like we talked about this before we came on, and it was like your whole intention is to shine the light on consciousness and conscious enterprise and a different conversation and narrative. Yeah. And I think the world needs this more now than ever, because it's if people learn to overcome fear of the unknown, fear of all this stuff, and then have the courage to find this acceptance and gratitude for every single breath, man. It's like I wake up every morning, take a deep breath, and I'm like, whoa, that was a 1 in 4 trillion chance of me being here. So we're talking about numbers, and this is a really good segue, because I did this post the other day, and it was like, and the Facebook world and all that, and the Instagram world and the stuff, I don't want to really be on there. I do my best to tune into the Zach Bushes and the Monties and the positive bias. Every time I pick it up, there's something beautiful. But the truth is as marketers, that we're tuned in to basically market to people's pain points. So we're going to tell them, what they're kind of trying to solve in the context of their own life, and kind of magnify and blow that up, and then try to sell them a solution. So it's like I just kind of sat there, and I was like, there was this article from this guy Hashim Al-Ghalali, and he was like 2 million COVID deaths. And I was like, every life is important. Dr. Jane Goodall shares this, right? Every life is equal and necessary. So I can't sit there and be like, don't worry about that. But I'm like, what about the 150 million people that got pushed into extreme poverty last year? I was like, what about the 7 in 10 people who are going to leave this world prematurely from a chronic preventable disease? I'm like, where in the media are they telling you that type 2 diabetes is reversible? That narrative doesn't exist. And then you start to question yourself, and you're like, well, why? Because healthcare has become a business, and it's like, I think we've lost the essence of what it means to be human, you know what I mean? And to have these environments where everyone thrives and gets their basic needs met, and there's a lack of fear, and there's a sense of harmony and inner peace, and like I said, people just kind of helping people, like we've seen in the beautiful Balinese community this year. Even in the absence of money, the farmer crops his crop, keeps 20% for his family, takes 50% to the market, and then shares 30% with the other farmers that helped him put the seeds in, and so on and so forth. So I think there's something in that simple metaphor, that represents the consciousness and the numbers that we should be thinking about. It's like, how much do I need for myself? What can I share? What can I circulate? And then it's like, if we can create these nourishing environments, and we can create these beautiful positive mental attitudes where we don't fear hugging people and human connection, which is the key to longevity. That's you talk numbers, blue zones, longevity hotspots like Sardinia in Italy, and for the oldest living men, and Okinawa in Japan, the oldest living women. It's like they're still climbing trees in their 90s. You know what I mean? And it's like, these are the numbers we need to be worried about.
Yeah. No, that's very cool. So on your website, so you just talked about the blue zone, which I think is a very fascinating conversation, because like you said, there's so much to be learned from that. And one of the things I'm always, talking about and that I'm curious about is how do we almost go back in time, to the way our ancestors used to live, and how do we merge that with, modern technology and modern cities, and because it almost seems like what tends to happen is people go on a spiritual journey or whatever, and then they flip completely and they go from being a corporate person working in an office, and then they go live in Ubud in Bali, and they become a hippie and fully disconnect.
Do the ecstatic dance, and
and
get
then
the elephant pants,
but fully disconnect, like fully go to the other polar extreme, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, they're disconnecting to reconnect with something deeper, right? Ask questions and be curious, and that's cool too. Yeah,
and I'm always wondering how do we take the essence of what they're drawn to and then bring that to everybody in the way that we live and in society and cities. And so do you actually think that is possible, or do you think, that we've kind of come too far in this evolution of fucking ourselves and it's gone too far?
Man, I had a day probably 2 weeks ago where I don't want to say I lost hope in humanity, but there was just the narrative that was everywhere, even with very intelligent people, was this one that was like very low vibration. It was fear and blame and victimization and separation, and friends were fighting each other. Even like some colleagues that I went to university with, they were really heightened about their belief systems, and I was like, I just wanted to step back and be like, look at the deep state, look at the puppeteers, look at the stuff that's going. You want to go down the rabbit hole. It's like why do we have an education system that says you need to be a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant for a financial system where we're printing more money and the US dollar is probably going to be worth nothing by the end of this year, and then the house prices go up. So then you need to work more hours to buy the food, water, shelter, and then you're stuck in scarcity for the next 20 years.
And then you're going to be more sick, so you got to buy more drugs.
Exactly, you got more stress because you can't pay your mortgage and your bills, and then all of a sudden another GFC happens, and rather than happening like what they did in Iceland, where they put the bankers in jail and then gave the money back to small businesses, the whatever it is kind of bails out the banks, and then we just go again. So it's like, I think 2020 was a massive disruption, and I think the world needed it. Trump was just a character in that play. You know what I mean? He just came there to mess things up and cause a bit of chaos, and positive disruptions are good. I don't want to get into politics too much, because I think, let's talk politics, let's talk religion, let's talk sex, let's talk everything, right? But I just think that if we have a generation of kids that is taught to be curious and is reminded that they don't need to be fixed, and is kind of reminded to chase happiness and remind them that they're feeling beings that think. They're not thinking beings that have to kind of like rationally figure out this world. It's like we just, an artist becomes just as valuable as a lawyer. Who's to say that, the reason we have lawyers is because we've got so much freaking disruption and, so much like chaos in the financial world and all this type of stuff that you have to pay someone to solve a problem.
And then you just create more problems and more layers, new problems, and then it never ends.
Yeah. Imagine if we invested in farmers and regenerative farmers, and we invested in social impact projects and conscious enterprises, and, who is it? The BlackRock group, one of the largest investment firms. They said, if you're not having a positive social impact in the world, we control about 1/3 of the world's investment. It's like, you are not going to get funding from us.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can see how people are starting to tune into this, and there's a big transition from centralized finance to decentralized finance. And I think people are just looking for systems which are fair and equitable and kind of like spiraling upwards, rather than kind of sending them into more scarcity. And I think we're in a unique situation right now.
And I really love that quote by Buckminster Fuller. Yep. So I don't know, I'll be paraphrasing and I'll screw it up for sure.
No, you're good.
But he's basically saying that there's no point changing the current system. It's create a new system which makes the old one obsolete, right? And this is kind of the interesting times that we're in, is because our thought and attention goes to, well, how do we solve this, rather than completely changing the system, like Elon Musk, right? For years, space exploration didn't happen because space shuttles were too expensive. And
Yep.
then all of a sudden he comes along and says, no, we just make them reusable.
Yep.
You guys are using an old system. Let's create a new system where it's brand new and flip everything on its head.
Yep.
We've got to somehow come to the conclusions of being able to do these things with things that are really important. Our health, pharmaceuticals, farming, food, all these kind of things. How do we go about that? Because I mean that's a big freaking job, and there's people making a lot of money from that not happening.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I think we bring it back to something that's human. I think a lot of the people that I was watching a documentary about some of the international bankers who had hedge funds, and they willfully kind of falsified information to make more money and so on and so forth. And he had this, like, I can't remember the guy, but he basically sat there and he was like, well, at the end of the day, we all want to make sure that our front doorstep is looked after, like our family, and we can rationalize anything based on that. But it's like, if I think we look beyond that, and I start to think about your family, and I start to think about, Wyan, who's down the road, who's got this little cafe, and he had to sell his wedding ring to basically to keep his cafe going through the pandemic. He used to sell Magnum ice creams down on the beach in Kuta, you know what I mean? And it's like, how can you do something at the expense of someone like that? I think it comes back to really being human and just being like, well, for me, it's like, I don't want to feed into a system. I don't want to spend my time, my energy, my money, my resources into a system that isn't going to be something that I want my kids to be part of in the future. I think our job is to plant trees that we never sit under, and just to create systems where, you're right, like the future generations are going to have the innovative solutions, like the Greta Thunbergs and the Malala, I can't say her last name, but it's these young women and men are going to be the ones that are going to create the new systems. And I think selfcare.global is that. It's like there's the 5% of modern medicine, which is like yo, you need to be fixed. And I was part of that, and that was the thing, is like, I was part of a system. I had the same vision, I had the same heart, the same everything, but I realized that a shitty system is going to beat down a good person every single day of the week. So we look at financial, we look at environmental, we look at political, we look at health systems, and it's like we're all kind of like fighting within the same system about the same problems without creating new solutions.
Yeah, and the elections in the US is a perfect example of that. It's like, that's a broken system that doesn't work, and there's this left versus right narrative, and everybody's sold into choosing a side, choose left, choose right, choose blue, choose red.
Yeah.
And it's actually all designed for separation. And it's not that Joe Biden is a problem or Donald Trump is the problem. The system is the problem.
Yeah, it's the illusion of choice.
Yeah.
It's like, and then from that you can polarize, and I think this is the challenge for the world at the moment, is polarization. Is like, you don't believe what I believe,
and throwing stones at people who don't believe what we believe.
Yeah, but then it's like, we all believe in the golden rule. Like, we all believe, whether you're religious, whether you're human, whether you're like an alien, it doesn't matter. We all believe that, like, I want to treat you in the same way that I want to be treated, and we want to do unto each other as we want done unto ourselves, and that includes the natural world. That includes animals, that includes human beings, that includes everything. So that means when I create a conscious business, it's like, I want to be, if I'm getting nourishment from that environment or the local community in Bali, I want to be planting trees for future generations. I want to be making sure that, I'm empowering a young girl to get educated, because I know that if she makes, $200 a month, 80% is going to go back to a community. The ripple effect of change is going to be amazing.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, because the job that you've now undertaken is a pretty big job, right? And you, more than anybody, could probably have a very comfortable job making $250,000, $500,000, super nice life, nice things, but you've chosen to just discard all that, live in Bali, live very simply, and that's by choice, so that you can live healthy and connected life. But then you've taken on this big kind of project of looking at this whole ecosystem, right? How everything is connected, because most people, and in back to this, what we're talking about with marketing, is that we're sold into the idea of niching in one thing, specialize in this, nail that, then expand from there. But then there's like visionary people. I consider myself to be something like this, and it's frustrating sometimes because I don't align to like this narrative around marketing because my thoughts are too big beyond that.
Well, you're just seeing things from multiple perspectives, and then you're creating a framework to have the conversation. And for you, it's like, look what you're doing now. It's like, it's not about Monty being the source of information, being the guru. It's about having a conversation for whoever is listening. There's going to be something in my story or your story that might relate. And then a belief will change, a thought will change. Then all of a sudden that'll plant a seed. And then all of a sudden there'll be a courageous act where someone decides to make a change in the context of their own life and do something differently rather than being a victim of circumstance or victim of the systems or victim of their life or the culture or their geography. There's someone out there that's living a life that you dreamed of with half the knowledge and half the talent. Yeah, and this is kind of where I'm leading the question is the thought of doing something really big is kind of overwhelming. Right, and there's more often than not a paralysis in that, right? Because when you think I've got to change the world, it's like, well, that's a really big job. But the phrase I'm always saying, the quote is, it's not your job to change the world; it's your job to create the next ripple. Because we underestimate how much impact we can have by just focusing on creating a ripple rather than I've got to do something massive to change the world. And now there's this narrative around purpose and conscious leadership, but we kind of get it in our heads from our old paradigms that we've got to go big and we've got to go hard and we've got to do this. So where do people start? Because like it's a big freaking job to change the world. So does it start with people just for themselves in their own life? Where does it start? I think there's definitely this savior complex that's going on in the world at the moment, and I've done it. I remember when I was 25 and I kind of hit that part of my hero's journey where I felt unhappy and unhealthy and disconnected, and I did everything that society told me to do, and things were just falling apart. So I was like, cool, I'm going to do something good. So I teamed up with the Oak Tree Foundation for extreme poverty and for people living on less than $2 a day. And we went to Parliament House and spoke to the politicians and waved hands in the air and did all this stuff. But it's like, ultimately, that didn't make any change. It was nice for social media and photos and stuff. But with this, we didn't really change anything. So I think
bringing back to that other point, which is that's fighting the existing system.
Yeah, and it's like, again, it's a nice idea and a nice thought, but I think where we can all start is you listen to like Charles Eisenstein, you tune into the wisdom of like the Dalai Lama and some really beautiful conscious souls, and we're in a system of like well-being and lifestyle where we've normalized it to serve from an empty cup, to live in scarcity and be proud of it, to basically to put the oxygen mask on others before you put on yourselves. And I think the first thing we can do is realize that this concept of self-care and filling our own needs isn't selfish. Because if we learn how to really fill our own cup, we learn how to put our own oxygen mask on, then we can serve from this abundant overflow in our energy, our vibration, our resources. Like we can build longer tables, we can do all that type of stuff.
And that's inspiring to people. Like people see that and they get inspired.
Absolutely, and it's like,
and it might just be a feeling. It might not be I'm inspired by the actions he's taking and I'm going to follow that. It's like I'm inspired by the energy that this person is showing up with. And that's making something inside of me move.
And I think mothers are changing the world. Women are changing. You want to invest in anything, invest in women, invest in education, invest in the natural life support system, because you talk about a ripple effect. Even if my mum just had me, and that was all she did in her life, and I went on to have this conversation and create systems that create ripple effects of even bigger change. Like it started with her. And that started with her grandma and her granddad, and she was born out of the Second World War, this massive disruption. They grew up in a level of scarcity, but they had all their needs met, what I mean? And they had love and unconditional love and things like that. And, she just kind of passed that on to me and gave me this beautiful, positive mental attitude, asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. And, well, she didn't ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up. She asked me what makes me happy. and then just like kept on kind of just guiding that process.
Yeah.
So it's like I feel like our job is to, one, put our own oxygen mask on, fill our own cup, and then just commit to that for like 12 months and ask for support and be in nourishing environments. We're a product of the 5 people we spend the most time with. If you want a flower to blossom and bloom in the way that nature intended, you don't fix the flower, you fix the environment. So seek nourishing environments. The reason why we moved to Bali, it's the reason why we hang around certain people is because our consciousness shifts, our thoughts change, our beliefs change, our biology change, our habits and behaviors change. And then obviously opportunities show up and we become conscious and we can see it and step into it.
Yeah.
So I think if people just did that, then it's like cool. And then from there, just influence your front doorstep. That's it. If you can spend 2 hours in your local community, that's even better.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people who are really like stuck in the matrix, there's a lot of, there's going to be some overcoming of your own logic, like to step into that where you can trust putting yourself in different environments and pursuing different things and learning different things, because it may be the case that you're doing everything that you can to look after your family and what you think is looking after yourself, but in actual fact you might, it's not necessarily nurturing. Yeah,
and it's like, I think the coolest thing there is like, I'm sure some people will relate to this, but we all had those moments where we just kind of look up at the stars, whether it's just, on a blanket with your partner, or whether you've had some plant-based ceremony that's, mind altering and expansive, and, you start to like transcend your own sense of being. It's like, it's a beautiful reminder that we don't really know anything. We think we know, and then we create these mental constructs. And it's like Pierre Sellers is probably one of the people that I'm most inspired by at the moment. And he's this NASA astronaut that passed away from pancreatic cancer. And you probably saw him on Before the Flood with Leonardo DiCaprio, and he just kind of interviewed him just before he passed away. And he had months to live, and he was like, "All right, cool. I got 2 months to live. I'm going to build this system to educate people about the impact that human beings are having on the planet for future generations." He's planting a tree that he'll never sit under. And one of his moments was when he was sitting in the International Space Station, and I remember this like vividly, and it was like he shared how he saw the Amazon jungle pass between his feet, and he's like, in that moment he was like, I don't see any borders, I don't see any race, I don't see any religion, I don't see any politics, I don't see any blue or white, I don't see any of that stuff. He's like, I see one beautiful fragile blue planet, a human race, a beautiful natural life support system, and it's like it's all part of the same thing. And then he kind of looked up at the stars, and he's like, and then every single like glitter or like sun that he could see or star that he could see was another solar system just like ours. And I was like, boom. It was like we don't really know anything. We're just using our senses to create meaning of the world around us. And if we can change the belief systems, and we can change the way that we perceive these sensations, and we can change the way that we think about them and how we treat each other and how we treat the natural world, then health and well-being becomes easy. Shared and circular economies become easy. Thriving together becomes easy. We're not having these conversations about, population control and vaccination. We're having conversations about, something completely different. And I don't know what that is, but I'm open to it.
Yeah. No, that's cool. And that's one of the things I love about this podcast is I'm open to all ideas, like I'll interview vegans, I'll interview carnivores, and to me there's no right or wrong. It's like I want to learn little snippets out of all of it that I feel resonates with me, and my mind is open. I tell myself all the time that I don't know anything, and not to be fixed on my beliefs, and not to be fixated on the ideas and the paradigms that I have, because it gives me the ability, I think, also to be more empathetic and compassionate towards other people.
Exactly.
Sometimes that's not easy, but and I think that's one of the biggest things that is missing from the world right now, is just that letting people believe what they want to believe and inspire them through your actions and how you're showing up, rather than trying to force your ideas on people. Yeah,
well, that doesn't work. You know, it's like if it's like the thing that I love is the best mentors in my life have shown me where to look, but they've never told me what to see.
Yeah.
And it's like, because if they gave me the answer and they didn't allow that little thought, that little chemical reaction to happen in my mind, then it'd just be like a borrowed truth.
Yeah.
And I'm just borrowing truths from cultures and societies before us. But if we get permission to think, like we talked about with the education system and young kids, and they get to be curious, it's like anything's possible. It's like, Elon Musk grew up, Pierre Sellers grew up like just looking up the stars and be like, I want to go into space. He made it happen. Elon Musk was like, I want to see if we can become interplanetary. And, he started with PayPal. He started with a money transaction thing and then used that to self-fund. And a bit like me, he's probably seen his bank account hit zero hundreds of times. But money's just an exchange of value to kind of fund your passions, to have that impact, to kind of live that life. And I'm sure he'd do it over and over again. And now he's the wealthiest man in the world, apparently. But by what standard? He's like, I'll spend 50% of my money making sure that if like an asteroid hits Earth or we blow it up, that we can go to Mars and live on a desert. He's like, obviously I don't want to do that, but he's like, I'm going to spend the other 50% of my money making sure that we nourish this beautiful planet that we have and hopefully creating some change.
And it probably doesn't even enter his mind that I want to be the richest man in the world. It's like he just knows that for me to create life on Mars, I need a shitload of money.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah, we need resources, you know what I mean? Like, that's it. And it's like, I've got big into decentralized finance at the moment, and I think that's such a beautiful world. Like, if people are looking at how do I, like, create time and freedom, and that's a beautiful space to look at, where you can make $500 turn into $1,000 and so on and so forth. But the point is, this isn't like a plug for like any of those coins or anything like that. What I've found is that the concept of money does not exist in that world anymore. Does it? Like, I can't even speak in terms of money. Yeah. Like, before I got here, I looked at my little technological screen and I had 10 tokens of value, and all of a sudden I've got 50 tokens of value, and I took 20 tokens of value and I sent it to someone and he helped me build my landing page, which is then going to help me have a bigger ripple effect on self-care. And it's like, for me, it was this energetic transaction. And you talked about like vegans and carnivores and things like that. It's like we're all talking about the same thing: energy, vibration, frequency. The fact that energy can't be created or destroyed; it's passed from one state to another. You either, the sun hits the plants grow, the soil takes up the nutrients, and you either eat the plants or you eat the animals that eat the plants. And then we've created belief systems that again separate us based on whether you eat that or that. And
stay inside and don't go out in the sun.
Don't go out in the sun, man. And it's like what we're really talking about is the way that we treat those animals. When we're talking about, the agriculture and the fact that it's no longer regenerative, it's like what we're fighting against is the fact that we're creating these farms that don't care about the natural environment. There's no bees left. There's no, the Monsanto like Roundup ready, chemicals are seeping into our soil, into our food, and then we're getting these cancers, the endocrine disrupting chemicals, and so on and so forth. And it's like we're just missing the point. So what we're arguing about is something deeper. But at the same level, we're just talking about this energy transfer from one state to another.
So let me take this down the rabbit hole a little bit. Do you think
we're pretty deep already, man?
But do you think that there are people in the world that maybe are evil, or that they have an overabundance of power that they are abusing for the benefit of only themselves, and knowing full well that they are destroying the planet in the process? Or do you think that it is purely just cultural, institutionalized, and they're just it's just a broken system that they're part of? Or do you think that there are people who are pulling strings, like making us sick, putting people in prisons, making people drug addicts? What's your take on this?
Oh man, that's a big question. Honesty and transparency, right?
Yeah.
So I think the audience can decide for themselves, but when you've got 80% of the world living on less than $10 a day in a monetary system, that's a massive disharmony. When you've got the top 5 richest people making $10 trillion between April and July of the pandemic, and then 2% of people, 150 million people, being pushed into extreme poverty on less than $2 a day, it just says that the systems have been created to create disharmony. Now, the belief systems behind that and where that's come from, that's that's
It's
centuries.
deep. It's deep.
It's centuries,
really
man.
deep.
Like it goes back to like the medieval ages and Roman empires of like conquering and everything is about separation. It was like this society had to conquer this society, and then it's like it was about world dominance.
It's just I'm going to take that land and take those people and
but then you've got indigenous cultures, and it's like the concept of land ownership doesn't exist. It's like the concept that you can charge someone for water is like it's absurd. It's like water's free. It's like how do you put that in a plastic bottle and charge someone $5 for that, and then put the plastic in the sea and then make us pay to get the plastic out of the sea, and have young kids from green school create projects where they remove plastic from the island. It's like these belief systems where whoever's creating these enterprises, they're more worried about something that isn't meaningful at the expense of nature and other people. And I think the belief system that's missing is compassion and empathy. That's the thing. If we all started to think beyond our own front doorstep, and I was like, right now I'm feeding into your system, the lighthouse. I'm spending time here, right? And if I was on this platform and this was maybe going to take the world in a different direction, or maybe take it down the wrong rabbit hole, then I'm kind of feeding into that system. Like when I buy a juice from Wayan, I know that I'm feeding into his family business. When I buy it from the big company,
him and his family have prepared that with love, and the fruit is probably picked with love.
Got it from local sources. They're feeding into their own economy and their own community.
There's a different energy that's gone into that food.
But the point is as a consumer, I choose. When I go on Facebook, I choose. When I go on Instagram, I choose. 25 million people went from WhatsApp to Telegram the other day because there was a system and a values-based utility that no longer valued their privacy. And as a consumers, we said, cool, well, we're not going to spend our time there anymore. So if all of a sudden you've got 2/3 of the world's population on Facebook that is no longer there, and they're on a different platform, Facebook has no value other than the data that they own. But then if
nobody's seeing it, then the data's not really worth anything.
Gary Vaynerchuk doing $50,000 in ads each week, his stuff doesn't have value, but he'll go to the next platform anyway, because these are conscious entrepreneurs that want to put this kind of vibe into the world, and they're just playing the game. But if we create a new game, a new life game, where it's like health-wise, you don't need to be fixed. Like work-wise, like do something you love, do something to meet your basic needs, and then after that, build a longer table. And then it's like, in terms of like nature and ecology, it's like, well, just make sure that when you buy or consume anything, make sure that you're feeding into a system that you would, or a company that you would buy shares in. Because if I'm buying something from a company and I wouldn't buy shares in their company, I don't believe in their vision, their values, their passion, and what they're doing for the world, then it's probably up to me to say no. But then if I'm thirsty and there's a system that's the only place I can buy water, I'm like, crap, I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? And I think that's where humanity is now. So I'm really hopeful for all these conscious entrepreneurs out there that are just going to solve these problems and allow us to make these more empathetic, compassionate, and values-based decisions with what we do on a daily basis, and then start feeding into a different way of living and being.
And I, as we were saying before we even started, I think it's going to be our children that move the needle, because I was never nurtured to pursue something that I love, right? And I think this is the case for most people. They're sold on the idea of going to university, get a degree, do this, and then so many people end up doing something different. Now, not to say that was a waste of time, but had they been nurtured to pursue something that they love, or what they love was cultivated through the education system and through their time in school and as a youngster, then they'd be far better prepared for the world. They wouldn't waste that time. They wouldn't be so wrapped up in trying to make money, save money, follow the system. And I think our children, they're going to grow up seeing how we live. We're still in that kind of world. We're in that world where we live here, but we still have threads to the old ways, right? Whereas I think our children, they're going to grow up not seeing that. They're only going to see, how we live. Well,
there's a young kid that I was actually I've been supporting and not mentoring or coaching on a monetary level. He just kind of like reminded me of myself, and I was like, he was born in 1998, so he was basically one of the first generations that was born where there's no recollection of a time where internet did not exist.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, and he, just the way that he looked at the world was just so different. Like I can still remember like my Nokia 5110 and, you know, the dial-up internet and like I'm glad I experienced that time because, you know, when I was bored, I'd go kick the footy. You know, when I was bored, I'd do something else. And now people are picking up the phone 40, 50 times, you know, a day.
Yep.
But I think that, you know, there's some really, again, we talk about systems, but, you know, we've got SpaceX coming up, you know, global Wi-Fi. If that's decentralized in a way that, you know, every kid gets access to the internet for free or for a margin of the cost, then, you know, the vision of Steve Jobs and creating these little mobile technological devices and the vision of the guy that created YouTube means, and like Khan Academy and stuff, means that a kid here in Bali or on the island out in Mentawais has the access to the same level of education as someone going to Harvard Business School.
Yeah.
And I think, but then all we need is curious, self-empowered children. And, you know, like I said with my mum, like, you know, she didn't tell me what to see. She'd been an air hostess growing up, and yeah, she's a big part of what I do. Like she's a beautiful soul, but you know, we lived paycheck to paycheck up until about 13, and she paid off her mortgage, and she was like, you know what, life's for living, Roars, and came home the next day with 3 round the world tickets, and I was like, nah, surely not. Like, you know, last week we were kind of struggling to get enough food on the table, and this week we're going around the world. And she just said, I just want to show you something. That was it. And then she'd obviously travelled, and, you know, I went for her 70th birthday, I saw her modelling next to the pyramids of Giza, and I saw her walking up golden staircases with some Russian prince, and I'm like, oh, like, I didn't even know that this life existed before you had me, Mum. All I saw was this single mum that, you know, kind of was working paycheck to paycheck, serving from an empty cup every day from my point of view, but actually she was giving unconditional love and serving from overflow. And she just showed me the world. So I think our job is to just show kids the world. And like the Pierre Sellers thing, his whole thing was like, imagine if every kid got the opportunity to see the world from space. The illusion of separation would like disappear in an instant. Yeah. Now we could probably do that through virtual reality, right? So we could take people there without taking them there. But, you know, just to be able to see no borders, no disconnection, no race, no religion, no anything, I think it'll expand our young minds, or the young minds to come, to realms that, you know, they can never return from. Yeah, and the technology will be so good that they'll be born into be able to do things that were just impossible. You know, like I heard somebody say the other day, I think it was on a podcast, you know, that in 5 years' time, you know, an 18-year-old video editor will be able to create such good films that Steven Spielberg couldn't do in 1982. 100%, right? Yeah. And then, you know, so it's going to be a very, very different world. Oh, man, and it's going to be disruptive for the old paradigms, because I'm working with 20-year-olds now who don't realise how freaking good they are. Yeah. But I'm working with these kids, and, like, what they can do in 2 days, I'm paying people, like, 5 or 10 grand for these, you know, big kind of packages, you know what I mean? And then not even solving the problem, just getting more complexity. Yeah. And these kids are just kind of like leveraging things that are already there and putting it together and creating something that kind of solves a problem for what I'm trying to educate or communicate or trying to do. And I go back to this kid that I was talking about before, who's 22, and you know, he left home at 18, moved to Bali, you know, got a mentor, worked with him, did what he loved, and then eventually got to the point where he went, you know, he had a beautiful girlfriend and they went through a breakup. So when he went through the breakup, rather than go doing the drugs and alcohol and that type of thing, he went to a little island, started a company in Singapore, you know, started putting his energy into building his own thing. And then, you know, months later, he was making 15 grand a week. And then he hit me up and he's like, what do I do now? I'm 22. I'm like, I've got more money than what I need. I've got a beautiful team. I'm doing what I love. I surf every day. And I'm like, great question. Yeah. I'm like, I can't answer that for you, but there's going to be something deep inside you from your experience that you want to help solve. Yeah. For me, traveling to Bali, seeing young girls die of malaria when I was in Thailand, being in a healthcare system where I became a health professional who lost his health, you know, having patients paying thousands of dollars each year to still have the same problem a year later, or maybe on more medication, just realized I was part of the problem. So for me, I was like, I just want to be part of the solution. I want to create a new system that makes the old one obsolete. I want to have a conversation over here rather than a conversation over here, and just, you know, keep the values and the vision solid, and whatever happens. But, you know.
Yeah, and that's why I like this idea of, you know, like the 22-year-old and Elon Musk, and, you know, even for myself now, my needs are taken care of. You know, like I make money.
Yep.
I'm pretty good at it.
Yep.
But what used to really drive me was make more money. But now the paradox is, now I'm not wrapped up in that. I actually have a greater capacity to make money. It comes more easily, and I can direct my attention to, you know, having a podcast, having cool conversations, and building businesses that are, you know, hopefully going to change the world. You know, in some small way. So, yeah, no, I'm optimistic, man. I'm excited.
Me too, dude. Yeah. Me too. And it's like, money is just an exchange of value. You know, it's like it's a token of value that we agree upon, and obviously there's powers to be that kind of change the value of that token. But one thing I think I'm really kind of mindful of at the moment is that, you know, if we, as an example, I partnered with a network marketing company after doing a master's degree, and everyone thought I was crazy. But these guys had a beautiful vision and values. They want to get more plants out to the world. They want to teach people about intermittent fasting and all these processes which are like just supporting the body's natural systems. And I was like, cool, I like that. I don't understand it. I didn't do a nutritional degree, but I'm going to learn. So I'm going to be in a room with, you know, 300 of the smartest people in that space, and then I'm just going to help them have a bigger impact.
Yeah.
This business cost me $2,000 to $3,000 to run per year. I ate my overheads, and if I could help one person, I'd generate income. If I could help 10 people, I could generate income. If I could help people, then I could create even more income. And it was kind of set up that way. So then for me, it wasn't about the money, it was about the impact.
Yeah.
I was like, if I can solve more problems for more people, I can attract more abundance, have more resources, have more time. And then what I can do is decide where I distribute that, and whether I feed into unconscious enterprises or whether I feed into conscious enterprises, whether I put into social impact, whether I self-fund my own projects, you know, whether I just go sit on an island and surf and, you know, build higher fences and just forget the rest of the world. It was completely up to me. But I got to a point where I was like you said before, I was like, you could just be sitting on an island surfing. And I was like, Bali's empty at the moment. I definitely could. I've had moments last year where I did, but I was out there for a month and I got bored, and I was like, that's good for you, Rawls, but what about the rest of the world?
Yeah.
You know? And it was like, and then I think there's just something that is human that, you know, you can't walk past someone in need and not help them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if you are, you're apathetic. And I feel for you, because something in your soul has been kind of, you know, really crushed. And it's like, we need to remind people to feel more. We need to create those experiences where, you know, someone with nothing helps them.
Yeah, and I think that the word that you use is apathetic, and that's dangerous. You know, like
that's our war, man. Right now is apathy.
100%. Let me change tact a little bit.
Let's go.
Blue zones. Tell us more about that, because I'm super curious about that, because I think there's lessons in that conversation.
Yep.
Which are relevant to everybody, how they live, their lifestyles, how they think of themselves, how they fit into communities, and it's fascinating.
Yeah. So blue zones, Dan Buettner is the guy that gets kind of all the credit for it because he's trademarked it and blah, blah, blah. But there was actually a group of scientists before him that traveled around the world. I can't remember their names, but I've got it on the site. And they basically found these longevity hotspots. So there were places in the world where people were living over 100. And these chronic diseases, you know, like obesity and type 2 diabetes and cancer and the mental health burdens didn't exist. And they draw a blue circle around it, you know, so they became these blue zones, right? But what they're essentially talking about is these natural environments, these communities of people that are living towards longevity, and they don't even realize that they're doing it.
Yeah,
you know, because it's like our human potential. There's this thing called replicative senescence, which is basically our cells. It's a reason why like a blue whale can live to 500 and a human being can live to maybe 140, plus minus, you know, what is it, cryotherapy and putting us in a chamber and coming back in 100 years time. But it's like we can basically live, our potential is about 140, right, if we plus or minus a few. But at the moment, the average lifespan is about 70, 72. So you look at that and you go, well, why are we only living half of our human potential? And then people look back and go, well, yeah, we're only living to 40 or 50, 200 years ago. And I'm like, yeah, cool, but there's places in the world that are living to 100 plus.
And there's stories of people that have lived to 200 plus,
and that's a whole different story, right? But then the concept of time comes in and all this other stuff. So, but from that framework of understanding, it's easy to see that the majority of the world, 19 and 20 people, are living to half of their human potential. And then the hard truth is that between 50 to 75, 80, the quality of life diminishes very quickly because of these chronic preventable diseases. And the truth is that 80% of them are preventable. Like Dr. Katz, Michael Grieger, like look into these guys. It's like you want data and science, it's all there. And then, but the point is like, I don't want people to focus on the problem. Because you're looking at Western societies, you're looking at the USA and going, well, USA, like, teach us how to be healthy. And I'm like, it's like taking advice from an overweight doctor. It's like taking health advice from me as a physio when I was burnt out. I was like, don't do it. It's like taking advice from a personal trainer that can't do 10 push-ups. It's like, don't do it. It's like USA spends $3.2 trillion on healthcare, and then $2.8 trillion is on chronic preventable disease. And then the people in the country, you got 280 million people, on average they're spending about $10,000 out of pocket for like health insurance and health, and the burden of disease isn't going down, it's going up. So spending all this money, and then you've got communities like Okinawa in Japan, you've got Sardinia in Italy, you've got Hunza Valley in Pakistan, you've got like Costa Rica. The natural environments, the life support systems are nourishing. That is the core. Then they've got community. They've got this sense of like, I think it's in Japan they call it like Maui or Moai, where it's like these group of old women that kind of look after each other through their entire life. Even into the 80s and 90s. This concept that movement is functional, it fills a need. It's not like you don't have to go to the gym, you don't have to pay for this big membership. It's like you want to surf, you want to swim, you want to get those eels, you want to get that apple. It's like, go climb that tree when you're 90. It doesn't make, like, it's not just like climb trees when you're a kid, climb trees when you're 90. Just keep doing the things that you're doing. There's no concept of retirement. This ikigai, this plan de vida, these belief systems are things I think that we have to tune into. So I think what we can take away from Blue Zones is the solution. And it's just taking away whatever is relevant to the context of your life, wherever you live in the world, and then just making it relevant. If it's, all of them eat mostly plants. You know what I mean? Some of them eat fish and chicken and other things.
So what are the fundamentals of their lifestyles and their food, their foods, etc. Which is the overarching factors which differentiates to, how we live in Perth or...
Two biggest factors is the health of the natural environment. So a lot of these places like peninsulas, they're islands that haven't yet been industrialized. So I think that's a big thing, is like people still live in harmony with nature. So
no big factories, big cities?
No, some do. Like, there are places like Loma Linda in California. Hong Kong is kind of flipping it and showing how, like, even in a big city you can still, help people live beyond 80, 85. But at the end of the day, I think the common factors is definitely this human and nature-centric approach to good health and well-being. And then the other biggest factor is connection. Susan Pinker did a beautiful TEDx talk on it. She's like, the two key factors to your longevity is the strength of your social relationships and the strength of your connections. The 5 people you spend the most time with, and they're going to influence your behaviors. Jim Rohn, you know what I mean? You're going to either drink or you're going to go surfing in the morning. You're going to think with a positive mental attitude, or you're going to sit behind a table and gossip about everybody. You're going to like argue with people on Facebook about the vaccine versus like talking to people about how you can pump up your natural immune system and remove fear and chronic stress from your life and really be healthy. So it's like they're the two factors. And then outside of that, food and eating mostly plants and moving in a meaningful way and not sitting behind a computer for 80% of your day. The lifestyle component and doing what you love, working in a way that you can meet your basic needs. It's not about money, because you can share resources as well and meet your needs.
What I love about that is it's so different to, the paradigms that we have around food and diets, etc., is because they don't even think about diets and they don't think about organic, and like they just eat. It's just like how they've been doing it for however many generations and centuries, and that's just integrated into the generations and who they are. Whereas us, we're questioning everything. It's like, okay, well, I did keto for 3 months. And it's like, well, now I did that and it kind of worked, but now I've got to go and do this thing. Rather than it just being an integrated lifestyle, it's like constantly chasing the next
problem, reaction, solution, problem, reaction, solution. So it's like, organic was something that was invented in like the 1960s in the UK. And it was where like the farmers got together and said, let's agree that the soil quality matters. So I think it was called the Soil Association. And then organic became a label that you could then use to market within, retailers. And then an avocado all of a sudden is worth $5 rather than $1, even if there's $1 million in surplus, because it became about numbers and money again, right? Whereas Bhutan is a beautiful country that is the closest to being a completely organic, but it's just like all their food produce and everything's like regenerative farming and it's natural. And it's like that's our foundational belief system. So we don't need to talk about, you don't need to go to a restaurant and be like, is that food organic? It's like, you don't need to like be mindful of the source. It's like, it just is. Yeah. And it's like anything that isn't is then taxed and becomes more expensive. So then,
but we're also part of that. We're part of that. So we have to make better choices, of course. And is it just the case that when everybody chooses organic, well, then the idea of buying something organic disappears because everything's just organic?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's that concept that environment is stronger than willpower. So currently we think we're making conscious decisions, but we're just making decisions based on the environments that we live in. So a lot of us are we're in Bali right now. It's so easy to go to a plant-based cafe. It's so easy to go down to the beach for a walk in the morning. It's so easy to get a gym membership. It's so easy to work online because you kind of have to, right? So
it's easy to know that people have put care and attention into the food that you eat. And
and also it's easy to know that there's a shared and circular economy because the Balinese culture has been like that for the years. It's the reason why people get off a plane and they feel different as soon as they get here. The Hindu culture is amazing. You have Made or Wayana Putu in the car and, they'll probably be living off maybe $200 or $300 a month and feeding an entire family. Yeah. But if you were in a tough situation, they'd probably drive you where you need to go and not even charge you. Yeah. So there's this concept of this like energetic karma, these like 12 universal laws that it's not like a spiritual retreat. It's just an environment that is that. Yeah. Bhutan is an environment that is just that. So our job is to create environments for future generations that are just that. I think that's how I feel anyway.
Yeah. So what about the idea of living as villages? Because I've read some stuff about this, and how many people that we can actually know and surround ourselves with, and it just kind of occurs to me that people who live in tribes are happier.
Of course.
Right. So
that's our evolutionary that's the thing that took us from being these like individuals looking out for threats to these, groups of animals that were kind of looking out for each other and sharing resources and bananas and things like that. That's how we became the most dominant species on the planet, by like looking out for each other and working as packs. Yeah. And then all of a sudden we got these, we sit in cubicles behind desks and we buy these apartments that we can't afford, and we separate from everyone else and we sit behind a screen into a virtual reality and
two screens at the one time.
And then, we're sitting there with someone that we like once loved or do love. And we're sitting there sharing a meal and a moment with them, and we're more tuned into what's going on in this, this created reality than the reality in front of us, So, I don't know, man.
Yeah, no, I think, and this is the idea is to just have a greater level of awareness of how indoctrinated you are into those systems, and not to say that I'm not on my phone, a lot of the day. Yeah. But I'm also very aware that when I'm doing it too much, I can observe that, and I can pull myself back out of it. Yeah. So that I can have some level of control rather than me just being a slave to it.
Yeah.
So not checking it first thing in the morning, not checking it at night.
Yeah.
Not being a slave to all the messages, and because that's addictive.
And we just have to set boundaries for the type of life that we want to live. If we want to live our life tuned into that, then that's our choice. But if we value, spending time in nature or with people, with our friends and family more than we value spending time, posting something on Instagram or arguing with a stranger who is just, who's destined to always challenge you. It's like you're valuing that more than you're valuing that. So then it comes back to a values-based decision, and it becomes something deeper. And I think the inner work is just to create boundaries for that. Like technology is amazing. Like right now we're listening to people, like people are listening to us all around the world because of technology. So it can be a tool for good, but also technology can be something that...
It's a double-edged sword.
Same as modern medicine, same as food, same as everything. And in between that is right and wrong. And then there's choice. And then there's the duality of our existence. There's, there's everything.
Yeah, but 2021 is a lot more complex than maybe 1821.
Yeah.
But I also think there's beauty in that as well.
Yeah.
Because it means... we get the opportunity to raise our consciousness and actually be, think bigger and do bigger things and, step into discomforts and, become the best versions of ourselves.
Yeah, and also you get reflections from different mirrors. You know what I mean? It's like I mentioned before that there's someone out there just like you with half the talent, half the knowledge, half the resources that is already living the life you dream of.
Yeah.
And now you could look at that and get pissed off at them.
Yep.
Or you could look at that and be like, holy crap, if it's possible for them, it's possible for me. And then you could actually reach out to them.
You can reach out to them and say, hey, how can I help you?
Or how did you do it?
Yeah.
Is there anything I can do to help or learn? And it doesn't matter if it's an 18-year-old or it doesn't matter if it's like a 40-year-old or a 7-year-old. It doesn't matter. If they've found a solution to the type of life that you want to live or the type of impact that you want to have or the type of legacy that you want to live and lead, then... it's like I feel like just have that 10 seconds of courage to create
and the
change.
The humility.
Yeah.
Because the burden of comparison is kind of... It's paralyzing.
Yeah, fear of judgment. But again, these are things that we've been taught.
Yeah.
So if we didn't fear human connection, if someone was to message you or me, I would give them a human interaction back. The amount of strangers that reach out to me with beautiful messages...
Yeah.
I always reply. If someone's reaching out to get something, I usually just mute it.
Yeah.
So that's like, it's something that's really simple. It's like reach out and give that person a compliment. Say what inspired them. How did you do it? How can I help? What do you see for the future? If someone hit me up with those messages or you with those messages, I'd probably send them like a 5-minute voice message. Could be a 10-year-old kid, could be a 7-year-old. Doesn't matter. But it's like human. If someone spends their time sending that and they've got that vibration of thought, I feel like it's my duty to at least reciprocate that.
Help cultivate that in them.
Well, same thing as what we said before, treat others the way you want to be treated. If I was a 10-year-old kid and I reached out to someone like that and they sent me back that message, I would be like over the moon. That would probably change my life at that age.
Yeah, absolutely. So, cool, man. Look, we could go on and forever.
Yeah, we could.
But I've got one last question for you, but before we go into that, how do people find you? Do you want people to check out Self-Care Global?
Yeah, that's the easiest.
Yeah, so you've got an ebook on there.
Yep.
Let me just touch on, because I've got notes of the 12 medicines, you call it. So I'll let you put some commentary around it, but the 12 medicines are nature, environment, connection, genes, mind, food, move, work, lifestyle, spirit, modern, and tech.
Yeah.
Right? And this is coming back full circle to what I said before around having a grasp of this, everything combined rather than trying to fix. It's like cultivate all of these elements, and then there's never any need to fix. That's my take on it.
Yeah.
But give a little bit of commentary on that, and what are people going to learn in the ebook? Yeah.
Okay. So I guess the biggest thing is self-care is a journey that I had to learn myself, and I'm still learning. And it's about It's about like choosing your ideal day, and it's about, you know, Jim Morrison lived to 27 and he lived fast and died young. You know, Jean Clement in France, she lived to 122 and she kind of had the same routines every day and probably didn't leave her fishbowl. And it's like, who's to say that one person lived a more full life?
Yeah.
So the whole point is to give people choice and to say, well, here's this beautiful cup, and the foundation of this cup is like your genetic blueprint, you know what I mean? The 5% that is deterministic, you know, and then the 95% of your genes are epigenetics, and based on the environments we're nourished in, our parents, our family, all that type of stuff, the choices we make each day, the pathways we kind of ignite. And then above that is like our mind. Our mind can change our DNA and our thoughts and our biology. Our mind can also influence our food choices, how we move each day, our work and lifestyle integration and balance, our sense of spirituality, what we believe in. And then outside of that, the cup is kind of like our human vessel. And outside of that, we've always got the environments we spend the most time with, like work, geographical, cultural. And then we've got the natural environment that we spend the most time with. Maybe we're in cities, maybe we're in Bali, maybe we're in Costa Rica. And it's just having a play with how these factors influence your sense of health, happiness, and connection. And also this deeper sense of purpose, and how you can fill your own cup, how you can serve from overflow, how you can create a ripple effect and start filling other people's cups.
Yeah.
So that's the methodology. And amongst that, you know, the conversation for spirituality as medicine could go as far back as, you know, the 4,500 different religions that we've had and the hundreds that still remain.
And it's different for everybody. You know, like spirituality is different for different people. Lifestyle is different for different people. Food's different for different people. There's no right or wrong.
But that's the point. It's a conversation. And it's not there to, the whole purpose of the ecosystem is to do this, is to have a conversation about what works for you. Because like I said, with spirituality, we could talk about M theory, we could talk about quantum physics and dark matter. You know, we could talk about that, or we could talk about Christianity.
Yeah.
We're all talking about the same thing, some sort of energetic transfer, some reason why we're here, what we believe to be true, and then how we choose to act and react on our daily basis, and, you know, essentially feel good and kind of share that vibe with the world.
Yeah. No, well, it's important work that you're doing, man. So, I acknowledge you for the big job that you've undertaken, and
appreciate it, man.
Sharing your wisdom and constant research and making yourself better, and sharing this and cultivating this in other people. So, guys, go check out the website selfcare.global.
Yep.
Get access to the ebook, and go check you out on Instagram. Is that the best way to follow you? You're not a huge social media guy, but
I jump on. Instagram's good. Rory KC. I'm trying to get off Facebook. It's a system that I don't want to be part of, but I know that 2/3 of the world's population is there, so I don't mind having the conversation. But go selfcare.global, and I'll show up there, and you can follow the little rabbit holes yourself, and you can find me and reach out to me.
Awesome. So one last question, and we'll wrap it up.
Yep.
So if you had the one-time superpower of mental telepathy, and you could share a message with everyone, all 7.8 billion people on planet Earth, what would that one short message be?
It would be a message that would change their core belief system, which would be basically around the golden rule, is just treating each other the way that we want to be treated, which comes down to empathy and compassion. It comes down to nature and animals and each other. And I guess this concept that, you know, treat each other in that way, and then I guess a lot of the illusion of separation disappears, and then every now and again just look up at the stars and remain curious.
Yeah, that's awesome. Guys, go check out Rory. Rory, thank you so much. Pleasure having you on the show. We'll have to do a round 2 somewhere down the line. So
give me a couple of years, and we'll see how much impact we've had, right? Because I think I launched this last year at the end of that. What was that? Jupiter and Saturn alignment. So the 20-year cycle is going to be an interesting one to see if we're sitting here in 20 years' time and see if we've actually changed the conversation, the dialogue, and the consciousness. And
well, let's hope.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Awesome. Rory, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time back down the rabbit hole.